Placebo effect. The placebo effect is a reaction to a placebo that manifests as a reduction of symptoms or the appearance of expected effects. The mind can convince a person that a treatment has a real therapeutic impact. In some cases, the placebo effect can be so strong that it is comparable to the effect of real medication. Boomerang effect. The boomerang effect occurs when the result of a message turns out to be the opposite of what was intended. In other words, a person begins to think or act in a completely different way than they were told. When something is forbidden, it often becomes more attractive and sparks even greater interest. Spotlight effect. The spotlight effect is a cognitive bias in which people believe that others notice them far more than they actually do. This bias arises from the tendency to feel like we are always at the center of attention. It appears in both positive and negative situations. Imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon in which a person is unable to attribute their achievements to their own abilities, skills, or efforts, despite clear external evidence of their competence. People affected by this syndrome remain convinced that they are frauds and do not deserve their success. Telescoping effect. The telescoping effect is a concept in cognitive psychology that describes a distortion of time perception. People tend to perceive recent events as more distant, while events from the distant past feel much closer than they actually are. Ringelmann effect. The Ringelmann effect refers to the tendency for individual productivity to decrease as the size of a group increases. The more people are involved in a task, the lower the average individual contribution becomes, because each participant feels their effort is less important. Pluralistic ignorance. Pluralistic ignorance is a phenomenon in which people mistakenly believe that others hold opinions different from their own. As a result, most members of a group may privately disagree with a viewpoint, yet still support it, because they incorrectly assume that everyone else agrees with it. Stockholm syndrome. Stockholm syndrome describes an unconscious psychological response in which a victim develops sympathy, attachment, or emotional bonds toward their aggressor during captivity, kidnapping, or threat of violence. Under intense stress, victims may begin to justify the actions of their captors and even identify with them. Pygmalion effect. The Pygmalion effect is a psychological phenomenon where high expectations lead to improved performance, while low expectations result in poorer outcomes. Expectations can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Ambiguity effect. The ambiguity effect is a cognitive bias in decision-making caused by a lack of information or unclear probabilities. People tend to prefer options with known chances of success over options where the probability of a favorable outcome is unknown. False uniqueness effect. The false uniqueness effect is a type of cognitive bias in which people perceive their traits, abilities, or characteristics as more unique than they really are. Individuals often feel more comfortable when they believe they are special or different from others. Curse of knowledge. The curse of knowledge is a psychological phenomenon in which knowledgeable individuals find it difficult to see problems from the perspective of less informed people. For example, an experienced professor may forget how challenging a subject is for a beginner encountering it for the first time. Social facilitation. Social facilitation is the effect in which people perform simple or familiar tasks better in the presence of others. However, when tasks are complex or unfamiliar, performance often worsens when others are watching. Munchausen syndrome. Munchausen syndrome is a mental disorder in which a person exaggerates, simulates, or deliberately induces symptoms of illness in order to receive medical attention, treatment, hospitalization, or even surgery. Patients typically deny the artificial nature of their symptoms, even when confronted with evidence. Birthday number effect. The birthday number effect is a subconscious tendency to prefer numbers that appear in one's own birth date over other numbers. This effect is especially noticeable for numbers greater than 12. Halo effect. The halo effect is a cognitive bias where a general impression of one trait influences our overall judgment of a person, product, or brand. This can lead to unfair conclusions, such as assuming that physically attractive people are more intelligent. Nocebo effect. The nocebo effect occurs when negative expectations about a treatment cause it to have harmful effects. For example, if a patient expects side effects, they may experience them even when the substance is actually inactive. Generation effect. The generation effect is a phenomenon in which information is remembered better when it is actively generated by the mind, rather than passively read or heard.